Welcome to the European Show. My name is Abby Bella, and this is your hottest European political tea and the coolest continental analysis. And now we come to what is known in the United Kingdom as the police bill. It is the police crime sentencing and courts bill that is going through the House of Commons at the moment. It's had its second reading. This is part of the process for it to get legalized. It will go through some revisions now. So it's had like a first, second reading, then it will go to the House of Lords. And it was passed through with a majority in the House of Commons in the United Kingdom. And it is a very seriously dangerous, detrimental, ridiculous, and medieval bill, really, and that's insulting to people from the Middle Ages, and for that I apologize if you're watching in the Middle Ages, which apparently seems to be the United Kingdom these days. What is wrong with this bill? Everything is wrong with this. This is like the intellectual love child of Priti Patel. Priti Patel is the Home Secretary in the United Kingdom. She's part of the Boris Johnson government. Let's not forget, Boris Johnson was one of the people who ran the Brexit campaign, which outright lied to the people of the United Kingdom about the type of money that was being paid out to the European Union, about what kind of money they would get if they voted for Brexit, and a bunch of other stuff. All of these lies are confirmed. They're fact-checked. This is like a real thing. And in fact, the Brexit campaign has admitted to spreading those lies already over time. But yet somehow in this late capitalist period in our history, people like this still get voted in to be prime minister of the country that they effed over. I can't speak. That they effed over with their lies and their selfishness and their money grubbing ways. And that is who Boris Johnson is. And Priti Patel is a very important part of his government. And she loves policing, and she loves authority, and she loves order. We all remember BLM being a major thing globally this last summer. It's still a major thing. It's still going strong, but I suppose in like the grander public eye kind of way, it was like really, there was such a big push in the summer of 2020. The United Kingdom was no exception. There were BLM protests outside of the Houses of Parliament. There were people out there everywhere in London, dominating the streets of London, wanting justice, speaking for themselves. And this was the entire United Kingdom community, regardless of whether you're left or right. People feel so strongly about this. And a part of the BLM renaissance, if you will, this summer was taking into account our history and also doling out justice to statues. And that's a whole other interesting issue about the kind of, what statues really represent in the collective imagination, and why it's so important to topple them. But that's for another show. When it comes to the United Kingdom, a lot of statues fell. Because a lot of these people in the United Kingdom who have statues erected to their memory are genocidal maniacs with a slavery past. And the reason why they were so powerful is because they were colonialists. And that is part and parcel of the history and the heritage of the United Kingdom, whether we like it or not. You can call it, oh, it's part of, it's just the Commonwealth. We all love each other. Canada loves us. No, that was like, you colonized these places, and for a while, you kind of got away with it because we lived in a different time, but now history is coming back to judge you. And I don't mean you, the British people. I mean you, as in the powers that be. So it's been an ongoing controversy, and it doesn't look good. It looks like this bill will, in fact, get passed, unless maybe the Queen says, no, don't do it. Who knows these days? So here Here's some of the more problematic things about the bill that that personally make me cringe in a political human rights way. One of the things about it is that it's just gonna like make everything a little bit more austere and a little bit more scary for criminals. So they want to increase sentencing for people. They want prison sentences to be longer. They don't think that they're long enough at the moment. They want, you know, they want the law to be a deterrent. All that kind of right-wing crap. And very calculatedly and disgustingly, they've been kind of implying that, you know, if we pass this bill, it's going to help women because, you know, these days, if you're the victim of an assault or, you know, something happens to you and it's violence against women, you know, it's really hard to sentence these people to longer sentences. They get 2, 3, 5 years for raping women and hurting women. Well, if we pass this bill, this is for your own good. So really, you know, women and feminists need to support this because this is for your own good. Oh, I hate that kind of doublethink, and the right wing is really good at that always. But at this point in the United Kingdom, they're not even pretending to be even a little bit interested in making this about justice, and social order, because this is not a matter of social order. This is a matter of social tyranny. But look, this is what they're going to do about the protests. So, part of this bill, a lot of it is policing, a lot of it is sentencing, but a lot of it is the right to protest. And there's a whole section of this bill that deals with, and Google it, look it up, and see for yourself, but there's a whole section of this bill that deals with protesters' rights, what is a protest, when is a protest a nuisance, and when is the police allowed to intervene and shut down the protest. And they're basically making it a free-for-all for the police to intervene. A lot of the things that are kind of part and parcel of showing civic protest in a civilized democratic country these days will be completely shut down. A lot of this will be to do with nuisance and noise. So if they can say they're making too much noise, they'll shut you down. You will no longer be able to protest in the vicinity of the Houses of Parliament in the United Kingdom, which is crazy. This is the stuff of dictatorships. The reason why people protest in Parliament Square is because it's symbolic and it's a big gesture and it's important to democracy, so that we can stand right by where the laws are made that affect us and that sign off our future and the future of the generations to come, and we can make a statement because we live in a democracy in which the people have a voice. I'm not talking about riots, I'm talking about peaceful protests. Well, that's off the table now and there's like all kinds of loopholes around it. It's like if it's outside of the Parliament houses, then it can't obstruct vehicular access, but like these tiny streets in London, like everything's tiny, so anything can obstruct vehicular access. Just standing on a street corner obstructs vehicular access. So it's gonna be all kinds of things around it. They're gonna make it impossible for people to protest. And the reasoning they give behind it, and this is like Priti Patel, including the London Constabulary, the London Police Force, and the kind of like narratives around that are about how, well, you know, in 2019, Extinction Rebellion put London to a standstill, and we couldn't do anything about it because the police aren't allowed to shut down lawful protests that is in keeping with the laws of the land and in keeping with the ideals and morals of democracy, right? So they're really pissed because when Extinction Rebellion was at its height in 2019, a lot of people were on board. The London Underground was affected. All modes of transport, from public transport to traffic, and obviously it made a lot of people angry because they couldn't do their normal, usual corporate business. And I doubt seriously that this really affects the little people like you and me, because we're doing the 9-to-5 thing, aren't we? But like, it really affected the bigger people, the people who truly have power over us, because it impeded their ability to make a continuous soulless profit off of our work. So even the fact that like London stopped for half a day back in 2019 really triggered them. And they specifically mention this. Priti Patel mentions this. Other people mention it all the time when they're talking. We're trying to sell this bill to the people of the United Kingdom. Priti Patel is constantly talking about Extinction Rebellion and what a terrible thing that is, and how the police had no force against this. They couldn't do anything against this. And they specifically cite that a lot of this protest law, when it comes to policing and peaceful protest, a lot of it is outdated because it's from 1986. Oh yeah, I forgot, of course, because like that was back in the day, like when the human rights still applied in this country, but they don't anymore, so it's outdated. Dear, oh dear. Incredible. And the 1980s were a really bad time in British history. This is like Thatcherite era 101, and it seems like even that legislation is way too liberal for Priti Patel. Now let's just look into this. Maybe you're a Tory, maybe you're right wing, or if you're not in the United Kingdom, you might just be like a conservative person. You might be all about order and stuff like that. Let's just look into what Priti Patel really thinks and who she truly is. Just to be clear on who is the author of this new legislation that will affect people all around the United Kingdom. Priti Patel did an appearance on a show called LBC. This is a London radio talk show. And mind you, let me be clear, this LBC thing is super right-wing biased. It has a clear, articulated right-wing bias. Everybody knows that. And it has a lot of different people on. It's kind of popular, but it does have a very strong right-wing bias. And here is a very short clip of Priti Patel making an appearance on LBC on one of these shows, talking about BLM and Extinction Rebellion. And I think specifically it's BLM that she addresses in this one. And this is what she really thinks about people who protest.
I don't support protests, and I also did not support the protests that were associated.
You don't support protest?
I didn't support the protest.
Oh, that protest. I thought you said you didn't support protest at all.
This is priceless. This is priceless. The guy is like, what? What? You don't support protests? Even that right-wing biased journalist is like, what are you talking about, Priti Patel? That's crazy. Did you just say that? That's like, you could like, look at his face. It's insane. Priti Patel, you don't support protest? Oh, no. Oh, I don't support protest. Oh, no. I support something. Well, I support protest. It's not this protest. No, Priti Patel, you do not support protests. That was not a Freudian slip. That's what she really thinks. And it just slipped out. She doesn't support protests. Look at her. Look at her. Look at the way that the Tories operate, the way that they cling on to power and authoritarianism at any cost. Look at the way that the Tory government completely smeared BLM protesters last year in the United Kingdom. Completely. I already spoke about Extinction Rebellion, but BLM was just as bad. And the toppling of statues really angered them, the people in government. There's this whole thing about, I mean, they could kind of take it when it was like lesser known people, like, you know, this slave owner here, that slave owner there. Again, they're all slave owners, and there's so many such statues all over Europe because that is part of the history of Europe and part of its shameful heritage. That's not up to discussion. I'm not even sure why these a lot of these people on the right kind of want to discuss that it's like not really true. It's true. But when it came to Churchill, this government really took a stance, and Priti Patel personally, clearly, is still affected by that in her heart, or like rather the place in her chest where the heart should be. Because Winston Churchill is a national hero in the United Kingdom. There's like this whole iconography about him, like he's like the conservative the conservative side of the legend of JFK or something. Like, he's really, really important to British culture. And because he's like a war hero, because he ran this entire country, and he did a lot of strategizing in World War II in terms of countering the other forces and all kinds of things, right? But Churchill was also the head of this country in the first half of the 20th century. He was responsible for a lot of atrocities that happened in colonial lands. He killed off, he made a decision during World War II that caused the mass starvation of millions of people in India. So here was Churchill in World War II, and again, that is so part and parcel of European culture, and kind of like this like more general kind of constantly self-perpetuating hypocrisy that we see very often, especially in narratives of nationalism. Because here's Churchill, and he's like this war hero because he's fighting against Hitler and all the millions of people that Hitler is killing, but Churchill makes a decision that affects millions of people in India, but it's okay because they're in India, so nobody's gonna know because it's not relevant. It only counts if you kill people in Europe, right? It only counts if it's like you can see it here. Like, it only counts if you can see the bodies. It doesn't count if it's like far away, right? So there's these statues to Churchill, and like, you know, these conservative people in the UK love Churchill, blah, 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 blah. Like, there's like a whole cult of Churchill. They got so fired up by the situation with Churchill that as soon as there was any notice of any kind of anti-Churchill movement from BLM, they put this like massive protection thing over him. This little condom of conservative protection. They encased him in like this little cocoon to protect him from, you know, the kids on the street. And Priti Patel doesn't like it, and now we have this anti-policing bill which will basically outlaw protests, lawful protests. It will de facto outlaw BLM, and it will outlaw Extinction Rebellion, and it will be up to the cops to do what they want. And the cherry on top for this one is that they added, and I'm sure like 100% like Priti Patel wrote this like herself, like she added this herself personally because she doesn't support protests, remember? There's a cherry on top in that bill, and it states that from now on, defacing a memorial is going to be a real crime. Not the kind of, you know, hooliganism crime it's been so far where you might get a fine or something. No more fines. No, if you deface a memorial in the United Kingdom, when this bill gets through, when it's active, you're facing 2 to 10 years in prison. All these statues are memorials, aren't they? Like, anything can be a memorial. But especially all these statues of slave owners, all these statues of people with checkered British colonial pasts, they're all memorials now, don't you worry. If you draw a mustache on Churchill's face, you could go to prison for 10 years. Who in their right mind is going to go out and oppose this government when this bill is passed and risk, well, I mean, obviously there's still going to be people out there and they can't stop us, and people will be going out in the streets because they have a right to protest. Because this is supposedly a democracy. But who in their right mind, who has a child, who has any kind of responsibility, who will go out and support people protesting? Who will really go out and show up? It's the perfect deterrent. Like, if if the punishment for protesting in a country of law these days is 10 years in prison for protest. I'm not even talking about throwing a stone at a police officer. I'm not even talking about that. Or calling cops pigs or something, you know, anything that might be even like the slightest bit provocative. I'm just going out and protesting. Or showing your displeasure at a statue that represents violence and that is insulting to you and your heritage. That's 10 years in prison. And how are you going to prove that it wasn't you? If you're in a group of people and they all get taken down for defacing a monument, a memorial. This is horrible and detrimental, and there's been all kinds of critique of this from all kinds of sides, actually, and it's the Labour Party these days is a disaster with Keir Starmer at the head of it. So the kind of opposition they've offered has been kind of lukewarm and not very. It's mainly opposition because they have to, because of public opinion. And public opinion is really strong. And you might not be seeing this all over the news everywhere in the world, but people are still protesting this. So ironically, there's all these protests happening on the streets of the United Kingdom in protest of the anti-protest bill. The hashtag is Kill the Bill. Follow the hashtag. There's been some people within the police force saying that the hashtag in itself is bad because it means, like, the bill in the UK means police. That's like slang for police, so they're saying kill the police. But I don't care about the police. I just want to end this bill. So follow the hashtag. There's people protesting all the time. Yesterday, of course, the day before yesterday was the funeral of Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth, and there were massive protests out on the streets. Massive protests for Kill the Bill. And that should tell the government something as well with regards to how people really feel about this. If on such a historic day, the sentiment among the people is to go out and say, you can't do this to us. There's a lot of stuff in this bill that is a breach of international law, human rights, all kinds of things. No question about that, but they don't care. The United Kingdom is on this hellish trajectory into complete anti-democratic hell. And Labour isn't even providing any opposition, so no real hope there, because it's just a light version of conservatism. It's gone back to the Tony Blair days of New Labour, where it's so close to being a conservative party, it might as well be, and the thing that rules it is neoliberal principle. So oh well. So that's the story on the ground. The Socialist Workers' Party followed them as well on Twitter. They're updating people in different parts of the United Kingdom. The SWP, they have communities all over, and all these communities are doing Kill the Bill. They're involved. They're out there on the streets fighting for us. Show them some support if you can, because it's an important matter, and it's a matter of solidarity for us all, wherever you are, whoever you are. Show the British people that we care about them and that we are with them in this incredibly disturbing time.